The life that feels too small for you is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that you have outgrown it, and most people never do. There is a particular kind of discomfort that belongs exclusively to people operating at a frequency the world around them was not built for. It is not the discomfort of failure. It is not the discomfort of inadequacy or confusion or the ordinary difficulty of a life that is simply hard. It is the discomfort of excess, of carrying more perception, more depth, more interior aliveness than the environments and relationships you currently occupy have the capacity to receive, of being, in the most precise and non-arrogant sense of the word, more than the space you are in. You have felt this, probably, for longer than you have been willing to admit. The conversations that leave you quietly exhausted because they never go below the surface. The relationships that feel functional but somehow hollow, where connection exists, but the depth you require is perpetually, frustratingly, just out of reach. The persistent sense that you are participating in a version of life that was designed for someone operating at a different level than you actually are. You have explained this feeling as arrogance and suppressed it, as loneliness and tried to fix it by being more available to people who cannot meet you, as something wrong with you that more effort, more patience, more willingness to accept less than you need would eventually resolve. It is none of those things. It is frequency. And frequency is not a mystical concept. It is the measurable, observable, entirely real difference in how people process reality, the depth at which they feel, the precision with which they perceive, the quality of consciousness they bring to their daily existence. Most people operate within a range that the ordinary world comfortably accommodates. A small number do not. And the experience of being one of those people, before you understand what it actually is, feels remarkably, consistently, and specifically like the 7 things this script is about to describe. If even 3 of these resonate completely, you are not too much for the world. The world has simply not yet caught up to what you are. There are 5 signs, precise, specific, personally recognizable signs, that the frequency you carry is genuinely beyond what most people develop in an entire lifetime. Not as flattery, not as the comfortable validation that keeps people feeling special without requiring anything from them. As an accurate, honest, practically useful recognition of what you are actually dealing with, so that you can stop managing it as a problem and start directing it as the extraordinary capacity it has always been. Read these 5 signs carefully, not to confirm what you want to believe about yourself, but to finally, honestly, understand what you have been carrying and what it is actually for. The first sign is that you have always required more meaning than the available options provide, and no amount of success within those options has ever fully satisfied that requirement. Most people are effectively motivated by the standard architecture of ambition: security, status, the accumulation of the markers that signal arrival to other people who are working toward the same markers. These motivations are not shallow. They are real, and they are human, and there is nothing wrong with them. But for you, they have never been sufficient fuel. You have pursued them, achieved some of them, stood at the point of arrival that was supposed to feel like enough, and felt the particular deflating hollowness of someone who got exactly what they were working toward and discovered it did not contain what they were actually looking for. This has probably been interpreted by you and by the people around you as ingratitude, as the restlessness of someone who does not know how to be satisfied, as a character deficiency that more discipline or more gratitude practice or more conscious appreciation of what you have would eventually correct. It is none of those things. Here is the first brutal truth. You are not ungrateful. You are incorrectly fueled. Your consciousness requires meaning the way a specific engine requires a specific fuel, not as a preference, not as an idealistic luxury, but as a genuine operational necessity. Without it, the engine runs but produces nothing. With it, the capacity you carry produces results that genuinely surprise even you. The problem has never been your drive. It has been the consistent mismatch between what your drive requires to ignite and what the standard options have been offering. The mindset shift that changes everything here is precise. Stop measuring your satisfaction against what other people find satisfying. Their fuel requirements are different from yours. Their contentment in spaces that leave you hollow is not evidence that something is wrong with your capacity for content. It is evidence that you require something they do not, and that the life built around their requirements will always, regardless of how well you execute it, feel like wearing someone else's clothes. The second sign is that solitude is not something you tolerate. It is something you genuinely require, and the quality of your thinking, your clarity, and your inner life in solitude is categorically different from anything available to you in most social environments. Most people experience solitude as deprivation, as the uncomfortable absence of the external stimulation and social connection that keeps their interior world at a manageable distance. They fill silence with noise, not because they prefer noise, but because silence without sufficient interior content to inhabit is genuinely uncomfortable, and most people have not developed the interior life that makes sustained silence feel like anything other than emptiness. You have the opposite relationship with silence. In silence, something in you that has been compressed and managed and carefully modulated for the social environment finally has room to expand to its actual size. Your thinking deepens, your perception sharpens. The constant, low-grade noise of performing accessibility, of being present in the diluted, carefully managed way that most social interaction requires, falls away, and what remains is a quality of inner aliveness that you cannot access any other way. Here is the second brutal truth. The solitude you require is not antisocial behavior, it is maintenance. It is the necessary, non-negotiable condition under which your consciousness restores itself to the level of clarity and depth at which it actually functions. The people who have pressured you to need less of it, who have interpreted your requirement for genuine quiet as rejection or dysfunction, were simply unaware that they were asking you to operate indefinitely without the one resource your specific frequency cannot function without. Here is the realization that reframes everything. While most people use solitude to escape their interior world, you use it to inhabit yours. That difference is not small. It is the difference between a person who has an interior life and a person whose interior life is the most real and most productive place they have. Your solitude is not emptiness. It is where everything important about you actually lives. The third sign is that you perceive what is happening beneath the surface of interactions with a clarity and a consistency that most people around you do not share. And this percept, ion, has been both your greatest asset and the source of your most persistent social difficulty. You walk into a room and know before a word is spoken that something is wrong. You sit across from someone who is saying all the right things and feel, with a certainty you cannot always immediately justify, that what they are saying and what they are actually communicating are two different things. You notice the micro-expression that crossed someone's face before their composed social mask reasserted itself. You feel the emotional current running beneath a conversation that is, on the surface, completely ordinary. You detect the dynamic operating in a group that no one has named, but that is, visibly, to you shaping everything about how the interaction is moving. Most people do not have this, not at the level you have it. They operate primarily on the surface of social reality, on what is said, what is presented, what the agreed-upon social narrative of the interaction dictates is happening. And because that surface is where most social reality is conducted, they navigate it adequately and without the particular friction that comes from seeing multiple layers simultaneously. You see the layers, always, involuntarily, and the friction comes not from the seeing itself, but from the persistent gap between what you see and what the people around you are willing or able to acknowledge is there. Here is the brutal truth that most people at your frequency have never been told clearly enough. The social difficulty you have experienced throughout your life is not evidence of poor social skills. It is evidence of advanced social perception in environments that were not built for it. There is a specific, identifiable discomfort that arises in people who sense, without fully understanding why, that someone in their presence perceives more than the social agreement permits, and that discomfort frequently converts into hostility directed at the person whose perception triggered it. You have been on the receiving end of that hostility your entire life, accused of being judgmental when you were simply observant, of being arrogant when you were simply accurate, of reading too much into things when you were, in fact, reading them precisely correctly, and the resistance came from people who preferred their dynamics unread. Here is the realization that changes how you carry this. Your perception is not the problem. Your perception is the gift. The problem has been the consistent deployment of that gift in environments that could not receive it, and the resulting conclusion that the gift itself was somehow defective because it made the environment uncomfortable. A scalpel that makes people uncomfortable is not a defective scalpel. It is simply being used in the wrong setting. The shocking truth underneath all of this, the reason your perceptiveness has sometimes made your life harder rather than easier, is not because perception is a liability. It is because you have been operating at a level of social and emotional awareness that most people around you have not developed, and undeveloped people do not celebrate what they cannot match. They resist it, they minimize it, they project onto it, and your frequency, your genuine, irreducible, non-negotiable frequency, has nothing to do with their comfort level with it. See clearly, protect carefully, deploy wisely. That is not hiding, that is sovereignty. The fourth sign is that your relationship with time is fundamentally different from most people's, and that difference has been consistently misread as irresponsibility, inconsistency, or the inability to function within normal structures. Other people seem to experience time as a relatively linear, manageable resource, divided into segments, allocated to tasks, governed by the clock with a reliability that produces the consistent, predictable, steady output performance that most structures reward. They work at the same pace across different types of tasks. They can be productive on demand. Their relationship with time is, in a word, regular. Yours is not regular. Your relationship with time is governed not by the clock but by depth of engagement. When something genuinely captures your consciousness, when a problem or a question or a creative challenge connects with the frequency you carry, time disappears entirely. Hours pass that felt like minutes. The output produced in that state is qualitatively different from anything you produce when you are simply working because it is time to work. It has a depth, a coherence, a quality of genuine insight that the regular, clock-governed work does not and cannot match. But when the engagement is not genuine, when the task is disconnected from the meaning your frequency requires, when you are working on what you are supposed to be working on, rather than what your consciousness is actually alive to, time moves differently. The resistance is not laziness. It is the specific, physically real difficulty of forcing a consciousness that operates through depth of engagement to function through sheer compliance with external schedule. Here is the brutal truth. The systems you have struggled most to function within were not poorly designed for everyone. They were specifically structurally incompatible with the way a high-frequency consciousness actually generates its best work, and the shame you have accumulated around your inconsistency within those systems has been misdirected. You do not have a discipline problem. You have a frequency mismatch between how your consciousness generates excellence and how most structures demand it be generated. The fifth sign is the one that is hardest to name, because it sounds, without the precise framing it requires, like arrogance, and yet it is the most honest and the most important of the five. You have always known, at a level beneath articulation, that you are capable of something that has not yet been asked of you, something that the ordinary demands of your current life do not require and therefore do not reveal. A depth of contribution, a quality of impact, a level of engagement with what genuinely matters that the standard options available to you have never fully activated. This knowing is not fantasy. It has not been placed there by wishful thinking or the ego's need to believe itself exceptional. It has persisted through failure, through disappointment, through every experience that should have deflated it and didn't, because it is not located in the ego where inflation and deflation occur. It is located somewhere deeper, in the frequency itself, in the quiet, persistent, entirely specific sense of alignment between what you carry and something in the world that genuinely needs exactly that. The cost of operating at this frequency, without understanding it, is the cost that has been running silently in the background of your life for years. The chronic low-grade exhaustion of a consciousness that is perpetually overqualified for its current conditions. The relationships that feel genuinely caring but somehow insufficient, not because the people are inadequate, but because the depth they can offer does not reach the level yours requires. The work that you execute competently but that never fully activates what you know you are capable of. The persistent, bewildering sense of being simultaneously present in your life and somehow adjacent to it, participating but not fully arrived. That cost is real. It has a name. It is the cost of frequency, without direction, of carrying something extraordinary and not yet having found the conditions worthy of its full deployment. Here is the realization that changes everything. The question is not whether you are operating at a frequency most people will never reach. The evidence in your own life has been answering that question for years. The question, the only question that actually matters now, is what you are going to do with it. Because frequency without direction is just intensity without impact, and you have been intense long enough. It is time to become precise. So here's what this moment demands of you. One thing, specific, non-negotiable. Today, stop spending your frequency on things that are not worthy of it. Not as an abstract principle, as a concrete, immediate, applied decision about the specific places in your current life where your consciousness, your depth, your extraordinary capacity for genuine engagement is being directed at targets that were never large enough to justify the investment. You know exactly what those things are. You have known for a long time. The relationship that requires you to operate at a fraction of your depth in order to maintain the connection. The work that activates your compliance but never your genius. The social world that you inhabit adequately but that has never once asked anything of you that genuinely required what you actually are. You have stayed in these things for reasons that felt responsible and turned out to be fear. Fear of the solitude that follows, withdrawal, fear of the uncertainty that follows, the honest assessment that something is insufficient, fear of the demand that clarity places on you to act on what you see. That fear is understandable. It is also the single largest obstacle between you and the life your frequency was built for. Today, not after more preparation, not when the circumstances are more favorable, not once you have resolved the residue, doubt that will never fully resolve before action. Today, you make one honest decision. You identify the highest frequency thing available to you right now. The work, the connection, the direction, the single next step that most completely aligns with what your consciousness is actually capable of at its fullest. And you move toward it. One step, completely, without the apologetic half-commitment of someone who is still not sure they deserve the life their frequency was built for. You deserve it. That is not affirmation. That is frequency matching reality. And the longer you delay acting on that match, the longer the world is deprived of the specific, irreplaceable, genuinely extraordinary thing that only you at this frequency, with this depth, with this particular combination of perception and meaning requirement and uncompromising intolerance for the surface of things, can contribute to it. The 5 signs were never about making you feel special. They were about making you feel responsible. Responsible for what you carry. Responsible for where you direct it. Responsible for the gap between what you are capable of and what you are currently producing. And for the choice available to you right now to finally close it. You are not vibrating at this frequency by accident. You are vibrating at this frequency because something specific is required of you. Stop waiting to feel ready. Start being what you already are, completely, without apology, beginning now. And if you want to explore deeper psychological insights on inner healing inspired by Dr. Gabor Maté and understand the hidden wounds that shape your mind and emotions, make sure to subscribe to Dr. Gabor Maté Inner Healing. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.